This is on herbicide tolerance on new crop varieties. This project has been going for well over 10 years now, and we started off many years ago, very small trials, one site, commercial cultivars and basically more common herbicides. And it's slowly increased over the years to include pre-registration products, lines had been released, chickpeas, and now we're including a lot of MBT work, MBT in their second and third year retentions. And I guess over the period of time we've looked at about, I think it's 46 wheat varieties, 26 barley, and six chickpeas with quite a lot of herbicides. And of course we haven't tested every herbicide cultivar combination. I guess the messages here from what we've done over the years is that registered herbicides can cause a yield loss in wheat and barley cultivars at a recommended rate, but this occurs in a relatively small number of cultivars. And herbicide sensitivity is influenced by seasonal conditions. Even just last season we had two trials with sprayed Ally. They were planted 8 days apart and they're being sprayed 16 days apart. And we had a big difference in the phytotoxicity affected 2 weeks. I think something like between 32% for the early sprayed and 5% for the later sprayed ones. But the big difference was the yield in the early sprayed trials. The yield was reduced by 15% overall, and in the later sprayed trials we got down to 5%. And the only seasonal difference there were frosts in that week following the early spray trial, so it's really influencing. And the fourth point is you have to look at the balance this herbicide damage risk with the weed problems and perhaps use alternative herbicides that are a bit soft on the crop. How we do this testing is that it's in 3 phases. Now, all MBT lines that come through the system into their second year are screened against a set of standard herbicides at a double rate. This double rate is used just to pick out the ones that are really susceptible. And if the ones have reduced yields and they stay in the MBT system, we'll look at them at a recommended double rate the following season at hopefully in a couple of environments. And once these cultivars are further released and widely grown, we'll look at other herbicides and what different range of environments increases every year. And there's a list of cultivars that have come through this system so far. They're not all adapted to our region, but we've tested them. There's wheat, barley and chickpea there. I think I've got them all. In this MBT system and throughout this rest of this talk, I'll be referring to these herbicides. There are 8 barley herbicides and 12 wheat herbicides. And there's a mixture of Group A's, Group B's and Group I's. Moving on to, now things have been released since 2006, looking at the newer cultivars. Our exceptionally grout, which is in here to make the numbers up for barley. There's 6 barley cultivars, 14 brand wheats, 5 gerums and 5 feed or soft wheats that have come, they're released since 2006 and tested with this range of herbicides. And what's happened in the barleys, 76% of all the barley cultivar herbicide combinations tested have had no problems with any herbicide rate, and 24% have had a yield loss at a double rate, which is sort of pretty pleasing. But even more so is there's been no yield loss in these cultivars at a recommended rate, which is a bit of change from what's happened in the past. So, but always remember this is just a standard set of herbicides. And moving to wheat, look at the same sort of thing. It's very similar to barley, that only 78% had no yield loss at all at either rate of herbicide. 10% of wheat cultivars and herbicides had a 10% yield loss, but the important part is 12% of all the ones we tested had a significant yield loss at a recommended rate. So look at that further. When I'm talking these herbicide cultivars, where there are 235 different combinations, there are 150 of those are red weeds, 43 germs and 43 other types. And of the 150 red weeds cultivar herbicides tested, 9% had a yield loss, and very similar 10% had for the soft weeds. The one that stands out is there were 43 germ cultivar herbicide combinations tested, and sort of 1 in 5 of those we had a yield reduction. So it sort of shows that the germs tend to stand out as far as the herbicide sensitivity. And further looking, as we go on and looking at the herbicide groups and wheat, the group A's have given us no problems for these cultivars over these last few years. The group I's, not much at all. Just now and then something pops up. But anything involving group B, that's where all the problems seem to occur, which is probably not surprising. Okay, chickpeas. We looked at chickpeas for the last 4 years, and with I think 6 cultivars, a range of herbicides there, and we really can't seem to get a yield reduction at even at double rates. This year, or last season I should say, with Broadstrike, it's the first time we'd used Broadstrike, and really it did really have some big phyto effects. They stopped growing, they turned yellow and they turned red, and sort of sat there, thought it was going to die. But after 60 days, it recovered good as new. It was really surprising how good it was. We had last 2 seasons, there's been a small amount of work using some Ally mixtures, Ally with MCPA LVE and Ally with Tordon 242. And from this limited testing, it seems like that the mixture with MCPA is a bit more severe than Tordon. And on that table, at 2 weeks after spraying, we measured phyto damage with the green seeking technology, and there was 90% reduction with the MCPA mixture, only 11 with the Tordon, but visually it looked much more. It probably looked like 30% to 10%. But it came back to a yield loss of only 4% to 1%, and this is over 3 or 4 trials over 2 years. But the interesting line is the bottom one. There were 23 cultivar herbicide combinations with each one, and in the MCPA mixture, 11 of those ones had a significant yield loss. It might not have been much, but it was significant. But there were none with the Tordon mixture, so maybe it's a guide that Tordon is a bit softer. Then we express his cultivar tolerance in a few publications around the place. They're on the net, they're on some hardcover things we'll come to later. What we do is if there's a tick against the cultivar and the herbicide, there's been no problem any time at both rates. And N is a narrow margin of safety, where we have had a yield loss at a double rate in 1 or more trials, but no loss at a recommended rate. Where there's a number, X yield reduction, is a bit of a warning. There's been significant yield reductions at a recommended rate in 1 trial only. And where there's 2 numbers, might be X, Y, say 6 to 10, that's a real warning. So we've had yield reduction at the recommended rate at 2 or more trials, so that's probably fairly definitive. And finally, there's a number in brackets after the everything else, which says years of screening. A 2 in brackets would be 2 years screening, and a 1/3 would be a yield loss 1 out of 3 years. There's some examples of how we put things down. For Kidman, we've Ally and Amosite for 2 years testing, and Atlantis hasn't been tested at all, and they've been safe. The Stampede with the Amosite, there's a narrow margin there. In 1 year and 3 has been a problem. Comes along Hyperno, there's been 12% yield reduction at a recommended rate in 1 year, 1 out of 2 years testing. And something like January, which is really doesn't like Ally at all, there's been 8 to 24% yield reduction 3 times out of 8, so you really would hesitate to use that. So the implication of this, of all these newer cultivars, it seems the newer barleys are relatively herbicide tolerant compared to older cultivars, but this is with this standard range of herbicides. That could change for the herbicides. It seems most of red wheats are fairly tolerant to most things. And durums are the most sensitive of other wheat types, and group Bs cause a big problem. So with these new herbicides, that's the way things seem to be going. There's more information on the DD website, on the MVT website, and there are some publications, the Queensland Wheat Planting Guides, and there's some information in the New South Wales Weed Control Winter Crops. Thank you.
Is the MCPA formulation amine or ester in the trial as well, the first one?
LVE.
Sorry?
LVE.
Ester.
Yep.
Comments on that compared to amine safety?
We haven't done much work with, we've done a bit of work, and I think it's very similar, what we've seen. Much more work on the ester than the amine.
That slide game there with the alloy and the mixtures, was that just bread wheats or a bit of everything? Or?
Oh, spring wheats, yeah, just normal planting time.
Not durums?
Oh, there were durums amongst them, but there were durums there, yeah, but that mixture.